Welcome to the third module of the Global Housing Design MOOC. After learning more about incrementality in the previous module, now we will focus on another design feature that is key for the development of adequate housing. We will talk about typology mix. To try and make things clearer at this point, we will start by defining what is typology. Typology, simply put, is a process for the systematization of knowledge based on the concept of type. The subject of typology can be anything from cars to plants, from bicycles to chairs. Think, for example, of the famous classification of plants elaborated by Linnaeus, where he systematized the world of plants according to clear formal criteria: the number of petals and the number of stems. This way, each plant could be classified according to its specific characteristics. In principle, no plant could belong at the same time to more than one category. In housing typology, the principle is the same. We can also elaborate typological classifications based on different sets of characteristics. For example, we can create a typology of housing blocks taking into consideration their relationship with the urban fabric. Here, we could identify diverse types such as perimeter blocks, slabs, or towers. We could also systematize the types of dwelling units according to their position in relation to the neighboring units. Here, we would have distinct types such as detached houses, semi-detached houses, row houses, or stacked apartments, for example. Some of the types we have just talked about are well known. However, it is important to understand that a typology is an intellectual construct. There are infinite ways of classifying tangible elements like housing. Those mentioned above are the most common for architectural and urban studies because they are related with design decisions. For that reason, they will be the ones we will address in more detail in this module. In many architectural schools around the world, including the TU Delft, typological studies are still extremely popular. Two of our colleagues, Bernard Lopen and Arel Moy, dedicated a book to an insightful study on housing typology. In this book, with the title Housing Design, a Manual, they developed a systematic classification of housing according to several typological criteria. For example, dwelling access, structure, or the building's decorative elements, which they called the skin. It is important to note at this point that a type is not an image that can be reproduced, copied, or imitated. It is rather an idea that we can often synthesize as a diagram. See, for example, the famous typological diagrams of the French architect Jean-Nicolas Louis Durand that he produced in the early 19th century. Typological diagrams such as those of Durand comprise a set of rules that can be used to create an image, a building, or a model. Eventually, these images, buildings, or models can be repeated, reproduced, and infinitely imitated. In this sense, we can conclude that a type is a fundamental tool for a designer. Rather than always trying to create something new and innovative, designers can actually start with a type that has proven to be effective for the purpose of the project, and then use their creativity to adjust and transform it. Eventually, the type can be dressed up with a particular architectural expression. This expression then can be related with materials, colors, or the composition of the facade, for example. In housing design, the systematization of types regards three levels: the urban ensemble, the overall configuration of the residential building, and the spatial organization of the dwelling. Looking at the urban ensemble, some of the most common housing types are the villa park, linear development, perimeter block, the open block, freestanding buildings, or the superblock. Concerning the overall configuration of the residential building, the most common types are the detached house, the clustered low-rise or semi-detached, the row house, the urban villa, the slab, the compact block, and the tower. Finally, there are several ways to systematize the distinct types concerning the spatial organization of the dwelling. In this module, we will define the different dwelling types according to their layout, structural configuration, and access system. These three criteria can generate a vast number of combinations. Some of the most common types are the multi-story row house with individual street access, the single-story courtyard house with individual street access, the stacked apartment with communal gallery access, the apartment with communal staircase and/or lift access, the maisonette with communal gallery access, or the split-level apartment with internal communal corridor access. Digging in the history of architecture, we can find established examples for all these different housing and dwelling types. In housing design, as in many aspects of our lives, the popularity of a certain type changes according to a particular social, cultural, and historical context. In the 20th century, for example, in European cities such as Berlin or Barcelona, the perimeter block was an extremely popular type of urban ensemble. And during the post-World War II, in many Central and East European countries, slabs were widely used as a type of residential building. Some types are popular for a few years or decades. Others, like the single-story courtyard homes with individual street access, are timeless. This housing type has been used for centuries in the Middle East and in North African cities. For housing design, it is especially important to understand how a certain type relates with a particular social and economic context. In some cultures, living in a stacked apartment is a sign of progress and development, whether in other cases, living in a detached single-family home is the major aspiration for most of the population. Naturally, each housing type will also have implications in the speed of construction, cost, and flexibility. In some historical moments, public and private developers that were focused on efficient production of mass housing created housing complexes based on a single type. In many cases, however, using a one-size-fits-all approach resulted in many social problems, which eventually created stigmatized urban communities. Considering this, in this module, we will discuss how mixing different housing types can enable the development of more resilient cities and inclusive urban communities. Diversity and heterogeneity are two key qualities that people search for in cities. Most of us enjoy having different possibilities to choose from in terms of economic activities, cultural offerings, social networks, or educational opportunities. This enables everyone to try and find the best possible solution to meet their aspirations. Likewise, in housing neighborhoods, typology mix can cater for different income groups, for families or individuals with different dwelling preferences or economic constraints. In other words, typology mix in housing design is a feature that enables the creation of urban communities that accept diversity as a quality and promote mixing as a way of integrating difference.